following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
Hello and welcome to News 9 Live. Our top story at this hour, the war between Israel and Hamas has entered the 40th day. Let's take a look at the top developments. 11,320 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis have been killed so far in the war. 4,506 children killed in the ongoing conflict. Israeli tanks enter Al-Shifa Hospital complex. Carrying out a precise and targeted operation in Al-Shifa, says the IDF. The Houthis fire ballistic missiles towards Israel. According to the Israeli military, it has carried out a raid against Hamas militants in Al-Shifa Hospital. The IDF urged Hamas terrorists to surrender, with thousands of Palestinian civilians still sheltering inside Gaza Strip's biggest hospital. Eyewitnesses in the hospital have reported hearing gunfire and loud explosions as the IDF enters the hospital complex. The Israeli forces are said to have first raided the surgery and emergency departments. The IDF said the operation was based on intelligence information as well as operational necessity. The IDF forces include medical teams and Arabic speakers who've undergone specified training for this particular military operation, with the intent that no harm should be caused to the civilians used by Hamas as human shields. The IDF further added that the hospital had become the command and control center for the Hamas. The US meanwhile said on Tuesday that its own intelligence supported Israel's conclusions. Hamas said it held Israel and US President Joe Biden fully responsible for the operation. Israeli forces have waged fierce street battles against Hamas fighters over the past 10 days before advancing into the center of Gaza City and surrounding Al-Shifa. Israel has now sworn to destroy Hamas in retaliation for the militants' cross-border assault into Israel, which began on the 7th of October. Israel says Hamas killed 1,200 people in the rampage and took more than 240 hostage. What do we know exactly about the Al-Shifa Hospital? Al-Shifa is Gaza's largest hospital. Thousands of Palestinians are believed to be taking shelter in the hospital. The hospital has run out of fuel and is no longer considered operational. Doctors have warned of catastrophic situation for the patients. Israeli air attacks have earlier targeted the hospital. And why exactly is the IDF targeting Al-Shifa Hospital? Control of Al-Shifa Hospital is key Israeli military and political aim. Israel says Hamas bunkers and infrastructures in the premises of Al-Shifa are present. IDF also adds that Hamas headquarters are located under the Al-Shifa Hospital. IDF alleges that Hamas is using patients and medical staff as human shields. Let's look at the other aspect. What are the Palestinian Health Ministry saying? Tanks and dozens of soldiers are inside the hospital, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Dozens of soldiers have entered the Al-Shifa emergency department, according to reports. Dozens of babies' lives are at risk. Incubators at the hospital have run out of power, according to the Health Ministry of Gaza. Moving on, Israeli forces are carrying out raids at the Shifa Hospital. Doctors have warned of a catastrophe. Take a look at this report that explains how the resources of the hospitals have been stretched even before the raid by the IDF.
Inside Gaza's Shifa Hospital, rows of tiny newborns, some premature and wrapped in cloth for warmth. They're in grave danger with each passing minute. They've been taken out of their incubators because the hospital doesn't have enough power. Outside the hospital, Israeli tanks, which took up positions at its gates on Monday. Israel says Shifa sits on top of a Hamas headquarters, using the hospital's patients as human shields, which Hamas denies. This video from Israel's military is said to show its soldiers delivering fuel for the hospital. Israel says it attempted to evacuate the babies, but was blocked by Hamas. Dr. Ahmed El Mokhalalati is a surgeon that's been caring for them. He says they're slowly dying.
Currently, we have 36 units survived, which means we have lost 3 over the last 24 hours. They are not that much covered in a way that temperature is not controlled. The only adjusted thing is the AC and the heater one. They will be crying. These ones, we feed them through a tube. We call it NG tube, trying to feed them. So they are literally in a very bad situation where you slowly kill them unless someone interferes to adjust or to improve their situation.
Shifa, which is Gaza's main hospital, has been a major hotspot of the war for weeks, taking in wounded or the homeless. The Gaza Health Ministry spokesperson, who's inside the hospital, said Monday that it had lost 32 patients over 3 days from the conditions, including the infants. They also say Israeli drones and snipers are firing into the hospital, making it impossible for medics to move around the halls, which Reuters could not immediately verify.
According to U.S. President Joe Biden, Shifa Hospital in Gaza City must be protected, and that he hopes there will be less intrusive action there. Biden's statement to reporters came at an event in the Oval Office. Israel has carried out raids in the hospital despite Biden's statement on protecting hospitals.
You know, I have not been reluctant in expressing my concerns what's going on. And it's my hope and expectation that there will be less intrusive action relative to the hospital. We're in contact and we're with the Israelis. Also, there is an effort to take this pause to deal with the release of prisoners. And that's being negotiated as well with the Qataris are engaged. And so I remain somewhat hopeful, but the hospital must be protected.
Among thousands of Palestinians fleeing Gaza's north seeking safety in the south is a mother and her children who fled to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis after the Shifa Hospital in the north of the Strip was bombed.
We thought the hospital was a safe place, but it wasn't. If we had stayed another 5 minutes, we would have been killed. They started to bomb us and we ran away from Shifa. My son got injured, so I left him there in the hospital to get treatment. I just couldn't take him with me. I was tired and afraid. I went to my nephew and told him to stay with my son, and then we fled. I came here to Nasser Hospital Complex for protection. And look, I am sitting on the side of the road. There is no space for me. My children and I are sitting on the ground, and we sleep on the street. I slept yesterday here on the street. I didn't know where to go. We walked 4 hours until our legs hurt and our hands hurt because of the belongings that we were carrying. We were carrying our children and our bags.
The Israeli army has provided evidence demonstrating that Hamas uses hospitals as terror command centers and weapons storage facilities. Military spokesperson Daniel Hagari inspected the Rantisi hospital in Gaza, showcasing the weaponry and ammunition kept inside the hospital premises. Take a look.
This is Rantisi Hospital, and this is the place where I showed you the tunnel. I want you to see. Look at what Hamas is holding inside the hospital. I want you to understand, this kind of gear is a gear for a major fight. People shooting RPGs from hospitals. This is Hamas firing RPGs for hospitals. The world has to understand who is Israel fighting against. They were all used in the massacre of the 7th of October. They even have bullets in this motorcycle. So they came back from the massacre on the 7th of October. We can see the ventilation air that was done improvisely to this area. And we can see infrastructures that was built in here. You're now entering into the room where we suspect the hostages were being held. I want you to look at this room. People are putting curtains with nothing above, just wall. No reason to put here a curtain unless you want to film hostages and deliver movies. Says, we are in an operation. The operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a Guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift. Next to a house of a terrorist, this is one of the senior terrorists who is the head of the operational naval operations that led the raids into Israel. His house is 200 yards from the hospital of Rantisi. Next to his house, there is a tunnel. The tunnel is let down more than 20 meters down. The rowboat found a door that is bulletproof, it's explosives proof, so it looks like a hard evidence, a clear evidence that the hospital direction is connected. This is a covered tunnel. It's part of the same floor and it slides down here.
Israel's army released a video to show soldiers finding weapons inside Hamas's buildings in Gaza. In a post to social media platform X, the Israeli army said that soldiers secured the Hamas legislature as well as the government building, the Hamas police headquarters and an engineering facility used for weapons production and development. Small arms, rifle bullets and the outer shells of precision-guided bombs appear in the Israeli military's footage. Israel has been striking armed groups in the West Bank with increasing intensity as it wages a war on Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip, another territory where Palestinians seek to establish an independent state. Now, heavy rains have added to the already existing woes of the Gazans, bringing fresh challenges for Palestinians. Several people in Gaza are living in makeshift tents following weeks of bombardment from the Israeli side. The rainy season brings along fears of flooding, and the densely populated enclave sewage system is at a risk of being overwhelmed.
Streams of water ran through a UN shelter in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza on Tuesday after heavy rain. The downpour brought with it new concerns and challenges for Palestinians, many of whom are homeless and living in makeshift tents after weeks of Israeli bombardment. Fayez Suru is one of them.
Winter is a nightmare. The situation we're facing now will be a nightmare. In the past, I used to wish for winter to arrive and for the rain to fall, for the trees to start to blossom and grow so that we can harvest, when everything looks so beautiful. But right now, I pray every day for it not to rain. We are living in tents, nothing that can protect us. When the rain falls, we will drown.
The start of the rainy season and the possibility of flooding increased fears that the already damaged enclave sewage system will be overwhelmed. and then disease will spread. Winters can be wet and cold in Gaza, and the enclave is sometimes hit by flooding. Juliet Touma is the Director of Communications at the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency.
When I would go to Gaza and there would be just a few drops of rain, the streets would just flood because the systems are not good enough to absorb and do all the, the absorption and all the sewage and water management and all of this. So the streets would really flood. This is in a normal day.
The World Health Organization said last week that Gaza faced an increased risk of disease spreading because Israeli air bombardments had disrupted the health system. The airstrikes have also limited access to clean water and caused people to crowd in shelters. WHO spokesperson Margaret Harris.
We're very concerned. We've already got outbreaks of diarrheal diseases. We've already got recorded well over 30,000 cases when we would normally expect 2,000 cases in the same period.
The Norwegian Refugee Council said the start of the rainy season could mark the most difficult week in Gaza since the conflict began. And other aid agencies have said trying to simply meet the daily needs of Gazans has meant they've been unable to plan ahead for potential flooding. Israel vowed to wipe out Hamas after the October 7th attack. Over 1,200 people were killed and about 240 were taken hostage, according to Israel. Medical officials in Hamas-run Gaza say over 11,000 people have been killed in Israel's strikes since then.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said that Israeli forces were in control of the center of Gaza City, having defeated the Hamas Islamist group in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Israel vowed to wipe out Hamas after militants burst across the fence around the enclave and rampaged through Israeli towns, killing civilians on 7th of October. According to Israel, 1,200 people were killed and around 240 were dragged back to Gaza as hostages in the deadliest day of its 75-year history. But its response, including a total siege and constant bombardment of the crowded enclave, has killed many thousands of civilians and alarmed countries around the world. Israel says Hamas is to blame for the harm to civilians because fighters hide amongst them.
You have seen the Golani soldiers sitting in the Gaza parliament. This is of the great importance. I can say to you that in the north of the Gaza Strip, Hamas has lost control. And in fact, we are in control in the entire central theater of the Gaza Strip in the north of the Strip and in particular in Gaza City. We are committed to the two goals and the two goals only. First, to defeat Hamas, to eliminate its infrastructure, its government and its military. Second, to return the hostages. When I pressed to begin operations in the first 2 weeks, one of the primary reasons was to ramp up pressure on Hamas. Amplifying pressure on Hamas is what raised the responsibility. If we sat on the fence, these issues would remain unsolved for years. This ways, chances are improving. I hope they will turn out for the best.
A crowd formed outside the Al Salam mill, one of the biggest in Gaza and located in the center of the Gaza Strip, some of them desperate to find food as Israel's weeks-long offensive against Hamas in the enclave reduced supplies. People were, on an average, queuing up for 4 to 6 hours to receive half the normal bread ration. Tragedy strikes Jabalia yet again, where Palestinians helplessly searched through the wreckage of homes razed by an Israeli airstrike on Monday. Hamas reports over 30 lives lost and numerous injuries, with 12 residential buildings obliterated. In the northern Gaza Strip's Jabalia refugee camp, Palestinians are desperately searching for survivors and victims following a strike that hit a street near the school where displaced Gazans had sought shelter. The community is grappling with the aftermath, navigating through rubble in the quest for those affected by the recent attack. Palestinians, including children, were urgently transported to Al Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza on 14th of November after an airstrike targeted a residential building. The strike hit a family home in the Khan Yunis camp. An eyewitness expressed concern and said that this site is supposed to be a safe camp and all the homes were destroyed with the residents still inside them. In Gaza City, smoke rises from a destroyed building amid ongoing fierce battle between Hamas and Israel. The war between Israel and Hamas has entered the 40th day. 11,320 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis have been killed so far in the conflict. The Israeli army released footage on 14th of November showing its soldiers carrying out military operations and dismantling Hamas centers and capabilities in al-Shati, Gaza. Strikes also targeted what Israel claimed were Hamas locations. Yet another video displayed Israeli tanks and armored vehicles during a military operation in al-Shati, cited as a central Hamas center in Gaza. Arab and Islamic nations, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Oman, Egypt and Jordan, as well as regional entities like the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, issued statements condemning the Israeli bombing of the Qatar Committee for the Reconstruction of Gaza's headquarters. The Qatari Foreign Ministry had strongly criticized the Israeli bombing, labeling it as blatant aggression and an extension of Israel's policy of targeting civilians, hospitals and refugee shelters. Qatar called on Israel to halt its misleading justifications and information for these attacks. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation condemned the bombing of the headquarters, viewing it within the framework of the ongoing military aggression targeting Palestinian civilians and civilian infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. Right now, we shall play some visuals which shall come on your screen, and they are from Khan Yunis, where a Red Crescent truck is seen pulling up to the side. That's the visual on your screen right now. The Palestinian Red Crescent said on Tuesday that it was able to vacate Al-Quds Hospital in Gaza City. It said the move came after more than 10 days of siege, during which medical and humanitarian supplies were prevented from reaching the hospital. As the hospital had become a threat to the lives of everybody inside due to the ongoing Israeli bombardment around it and firing upon those inside, in addition to a complete power outage and the depletion of water and food for the patients, it became impossible to continue providing the necessary medical care under these conditions, it added. Patients were being transferred to hospitals in southern parts of the Gaza Strip, it said, adding those hospitals are already suffering from fuel shortages and a scarcity of medicines and medical supplies as well. King Abdullah of Jordan has rejected the possibility of any military or security solution in Gaza. In an official meeting with senior politicians at the Royal Palace, King Abdullah said that there could be no military or security solution to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. The monarch was quoted as saying that the root cause of the crisis was Israel's denial of the legitimate rights of the people of Palestine. He also emphasized that the only path to solution started from Israel recognizing the rights of the Palestinians. King Abdullah also rebuked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's announcement that Israel was seeking overall security responsibility for the Gaza Strip. He said that any such solution which involved Israel occupying parts of Gaza was totally unacceptable. And in other international stories, Chinese President Xi Jinping has arrived in the United States for his first visit in 6 years after US President Biden said his goal in their bilateral talks this week was to restore normal communication with Beijing, including military-to-military contacts. Xi is due to meet Biden near San Francisco on Wednesday morning, U.S. time, before attending the annual summit of the 21-member Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC group. Xi's summit with Biden shall be first face-to-face meeting between the U.S. and Chinese leaders in a year and has been billed by U.S. officials as an opportunity to reduce friction in what many see as the world's most dangerous rivalry. Biden, touting his foreign policy expertise, addresses concerns ahead of the U.S.-China summit in San Francisco, acknowledging China's real problem. Biden emphasizes the need to avoid sparking new tensions and challenges in Afghanistan and in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Joe Biden sees engaging with President Xi as part of re-establishing American leadership globally, acknowledging the complexities involved. And in some election news around India, the Election Commission has issued a show-cause notice to Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, responding to a complaint filed by the Bharatiya Janata Party. The complaint alleged that she made false and unverified statements against Prime Minister Narendra Modi during an election rally in Madhya Pradesh. The BJP accused Priyanka Gandhi of making a baseless and false claim that the Modi government had privatized public sector undertakings. The specific allegation was that Prime Minister Modi had allegedly given away PSU BHEL to his industrialist friends. The Election Commission has asked Priyanka Gandhi Vadra to explain why her statement by 8 p.m. on 16th of November. The Election Commission of India has asked political parties to furnish by 15th of November the details of all the donations they have so far received through electoral bonds since the inception of the scheme. The development comes after the Supreme Court directed the ECI to produce an up-to-date data of funds received by political parties through electoral bonds until 30th of September 2023. In a letter addressed to heads of all the political parties on 3rd of November, the ECI has sought the detailed particulars of donors against each bond, the amount of each bond and the full particulars of the credit received against each bond. Prime Minister Modi held a roadshow in Ranchi, Jharkhand, followed by a visit to Ulihatu, the birthplace of Birsa Munda. During the visit, he shall also tour the Birsa Munda Museum and addressed a public rally at Birsa College Football Stadium in Khunti. The PM-PVTG Development Mission, a program aimed at the comprehensive development of particularly vulnerable tribal groups, shall be inaugurated as well. In addition, Prime Minister will deliver a public address in the Baitu Assembly segment of pole-bound Rajasthan on the same day, targeting the border districts of Barmer and Jaisalmer. This marks his second public address since the release of the final list of nominations on 9th of November. The official program of Prime Minister Modi is yet to reach the state BJP. B.S. Yedurappa's son and Shikaripura MLA B.Y. Vijendra will officially assume the role of Karnataka BJP unit president, replacing Nalin Kumar Katil. The newly appointed BJP state president Vijendra announced that he shall officially assume office on 15th of November at the BJP office, Jagannath Bhavan in Bengaluru. Vijendra shared with the media that the decision to appoint him as the state president was discussed and confirmed by top BJP leaders including JP Nadda, Amit Shah and B.L. Santosh. Prior to his announcement, Vijendra visited the Siddhaganga Mutt in Tumakuru, paying respects at Shivakumar Swamiji's Gaduge. He mentioned that seeking the blessings of Shivakumar Swamiji before any important decision is a tradition followed even by his father, B.S. Yedurappa. For the fourth consecutive day, the rescue operation continued to evacuate 40 workers who were trapped inside the tunnel after a collapse on the centre's ambitious Char Dham all-weather highway project. Meanwhile, protests have erupted outside the tunnel, demanding immediate evacuation of workers who have been trapped inside. The protests are being held by the workers who are employed for the tunnel construction. Over 150 personnel from the National Disaster Response Force, Indo-Tibetan Border Police and Border Roads organizations have been working almost round the clock to reach the trapped workers. The authorities have mentioned that the rescue operation could take up to perhaps 2 more days. Fortunately, there are no reports of any casualties so far. On Monday, Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, Pushkar Singh Dhami, also visited the site. Rescuers at the under-construction tunnel collapse site initiated the process on Tuesday of inserting large diameter mild steel pipes through the rubble using an auger machine to rescue 40 workers who have been trapped for 2 days now, according to officials. What exactly are auger machines? Well, auger machines are used for laying horizontal pipes without digging trenches. Auger machines are initially utilized, fail to achieve the desired outcome. The American auger has been requisitioned from New Delhi. The new machine is expected to reach Uttarkashi within the next few hours. Why exactly is the rescue operation proving to be so tough? The reasons. The rescue operation is difficult due to the condition of the soil. The soil at the mishap site is loose. Boring is to be carried out with extreme care to prevent any collapse. Moving on, the Zorawar tank is a new feather in the Indian defence's cap. The light tank, which is indigenously developed, shall be ready for trials in the high altitude mountainous border with China by the end of this year. India has commissioned 59 of these tanks, but the number is likely to go up to 600. Let's take a look at some of the details of Zorawar. The light tank Zorawar is developed jointly by the DRDO and L&T. Zorawar is named after the legendary Indian general Zorawar Singh. The light tank is a multiple weapons platform with niche technology. The tank has enhanced mobility in high altitude terrains, equipped with AI-driven functionality and lethal firepower, multi-layered protection and real-time situational awareness as well. The tank shall have a 3-man crew, namely commander, gunner and a driver. The importance of the Zorawar tank is to counter China's light tanks on the LAC. Zorawar can travel and maneuver faster than conventional tanks. Zorawar can be deployed against Pakistan as well when required. A quadcopter drone is available on tank, and that is extremely important. Loitering ammunition shall also be available in tank. Zorawar can also be deployed in the Run of Kutch terrain effectively. Distressing conditions continue in Somalia's Dolo district, where homes have been forsaken, roads transformed into rivers, And there are major concerns over depleting food supplies, the impact of severe flooding that has cut off access routes to the Somali town, exacerbating fears of imminent food shortages. Take a look.
In Somalia's Dolo district, homes are abandoned, roads have turned into rivers, and food is running out. Severe flooding, which has caused death and destruction across East Africa, has cut roads into Dolo town. Shop owner Farhan Ali Abdullah says there are no supplies coming in.
We can't bring goods in by plane. There is a serious shortage of goods, fuel, food and all other things in the city. Really, we will be feeling the impact.
The United Nations has described the floods in Somalia and its neighbours as a once-in-a-century event. Around 1.6 million people in Somalia could be affected, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said last week. In Dolo, some say moving around the worst-hit areas of towns and villages has become dangerous. Dolo resident Tamad Hussein Abdi fears what might be waiting beneath the surface.
We cannot go to some of the places in the town because of the high level of water. We are afraid of crocodiles and other animals in the flood.
Some families here have been moved to camps for internally displaced people. Others have stayed, hoping to find a way to pick up the pieces.
A new report compiled by more than a dozen US agencies and hundreds of scientists say that climate change is increasingly harming Americans and intensifying heat waves, wildfires and extreme flooding. The National Climate Assessment, which is released roughly every 5 years, found that nearly every aspect of American life is under growing threat from climate change. Let's take a look.
A new report compiled by more than a dozen U.S. agencies and hundreds of scientists says that climate change is increasingly harming Americans, with intensifying heat waves, wildfires, and extreme flooding. The National Climate Assessment, which is released roughly every 5 years, found that nearly every aspect of American life is under growing threat from climate change. On Tuesday, President Joe Biden said the report was the most comprehensive yet.
This assessment shows us in clear scientific terms that climate change is impacting all regions, all sectors of the United States, not just some, all.
Biden also announced new funding to bolster the U.S. power grid and reduce flood risks.
Along with this assessment, I'm announcing $6 billion in new investments from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law to make communities across the country more resilient to climate change.
Biden said that last year alone, natural disasters caused $178 billion in damages in the United States, often hitting the most vulnerable the hardest. According to the report, climate change is also increasingly imposing costs to Americans, as threats such as extreme heat push up medical bills, and as prices rise for weather-related insurance.
When a climate disaster happens, we pay either through insurance companies, through government relief, or paying money sort of after the fact.
Ted Scher, a professor of ecosystem science at Northern Arizona University, believes more action is still badly needed, but says the outlook was not all doom and gloom.
Sometimes the public focuses and hears about the climate disasters and often thinks that maybe there's not much action, but there are these bright spots. So we've, as a nation, have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions, even as our population has gone up and our economy has increased. We've been able to do that while decreasing the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions.
The assessment marks the fifth such report by the U.S. government since 2000. It was the first produced since 2018, when the administration of then-President Donald Trump was dismantling rules meant to rein in climate warming emissions. Trump, who denies the science of climate change, dismissed the 2018 assessment.
In Myanmar's Shan State Hills lies Inle Lake, a UNESCO biosphere reserve. Once a tourist magnet renowned for its stilt houses and leg-rowing fishermen, the lake now faces a threat. Locals caution that expanding floating farms are encroaching on surface area, causing chemical runoff. and cluttering the picturesque site with discarded plant matter. The weed grows rampantly on the surface of inlet, depleting oxygen levels by blotting out light for other plants, so it makes for a free and abundant building block for plantations. The centuries-old Japanese tradition of cormorant fishing, intertwined with the economy built around it, is now facing threat from the growing unpredictability of weather patterns due to climate change. Take a closer look as to how the changing climate is shrinking the Japanese fishers' catch.
In Japan, cormorant fishing is seen as the ideal way of catching the Ayu river fish and has become a popular tourism spectacle. But fisherfolk there say the changing climate is shrinking their catch as they worry for the future of their centuries-old tradition. These Japanese fishermen are catching Ayu sweetfish using a traditional fishing practice called ukai. Each of these strings are leashed to a cormorant who do the actual fishing. They're trained to heed the human fisher's commands. The seabirds catch the fish that are darting away from the flames, and the leash on their necks and bodies keeps them from swallowing the larger sellable fish. The master fisherman then coaxes the birds to release the fish into a bucket. Yoichiro Adachi is one of just 48 people in Japan who still practice ukai, a ritual once common in Japan with a version also practiced in China.
Once it gets dark, when the sun has gone down enough that you can't see the ground and the sweet fish are sleeping, you raise up a flame and start ukai fishing. When you do that, it surprises the sweet fish, so they start moving around trying to get away. That's how the cormorants get them.
Adachi is the 18th generation of his family to be a master cormorant fisherman in the Odze township north of Nagoya. His family has long been a supplier of the sweet fish delicacy for Japan's imperial household. But times and the climate are changing. As the planet warms, weather patterns are becoming more unreliable. Heavier rains are making the once calm Nagara River more prone to flooding. And the 48-year-old fisherman says the problem is not just a change in water levels.
In the past, there were only big boulders, but now they're small. The sand and gravel has increased, and along with that, the sweet fish have gotten smaller too. That's my feeling.
Gifu University river engineering professor Morihiro Harada says the sand and gravel are coming from flood prevention works.
Due to the warming of recent years, major flooding has become much more likely. So the managers of the river have rapidly increased the pace of river improvement works. The sweetfish like to eat algae attached to large rocks, but the rocks are being covered up with gravel and sand, so the sweetfish can't get to them.
The changing climate is also hitting the ukai industry in Gifu City downriver from Odze, which has turned to tourism for more income. Fleets of boats allow visitors to eat and drink as they watch the master fishers and their birds. But the chairman of an economic development body known as Organ, Yusuke Kaba, said the unpredictable weather is causing a growing number of cancellations. He even recalled times when tour boats were washed all the way to the mouth of the Nagara River. To adapt to the challenges, his group is now trialing a more luxury viewing deck with trainee geishas and other traditional performers. But as the river temperature rises to a high of 30 degrees Celsius or 86 Fahrenheit, which can delay the spawning period of the Ayu by a month, the future of the sweetfish and the 13th-century-old ukai tradition remains at the mercy of climate change.
Even as Iceland braces for a potential volcanic eruption, signs of underground magma pressure become more evident, causing roads to crack and buildings to buckle. The south of the country experienced 900 earthquakes on Monday. Iceland's Met Office observes that the magma is moving closer to the surface. Take a look.
Roads have begun to crack and buildings buckle under the pressure of underground magma as Iceland prepares for a possible volcanic eruption. 900 earthquakes hit the south of the country on Monday, with tens of thousands of tremors reported in the region of Reykjanes in recent weeks. Scientists began to worry as lava started to head to the surface, as Matthew James Roberts from the Icelandic Meteorological Office explains.
This intrusion was 15 kilometers long, and to begin with, there were thousands of cubic meters per second of molten rock magma coursing into this intrusion. This intrusion now sits just below the Earth's surface, so a molten sheet of magma over a distance of 15 kilometers, and it in fact stretches through and beneath the coastal town of Grindavik.
All 3,800 residents of the town were evacuated from their homes over the weekend. Most have been able to find accommodation with friends and family, with only 50 to 70 in evacuation centres. Local Hans Vera says they are used to earthquakes, but not like this.
It was always shaking. So there was no way to get sleep or nothing. So we were like a little bit like, this is not normal anymore.
Evacuees were able to return home briefly to retrieve belongings, but only via an escort.
Huge cars from the rescue team, 20 policemen, all blinking lights. It's just unreal. It's like a war zone or something. It's really strange.
Authorities fear the underground magma will pierce the Earth's surface and potentially hit the coastal town and a geothermal power station.
And the major worry from a hazard and risk perspective is that the magma could come to the surface and produce a fissure eruption, a Hawaiian-style lava-producing volcanic eruption, and this could produce fissures over a long length.
The Reykjanes Peninsula is a volcanic and seismic hotspot, with volcanic activity occurring as recently as July. In March 2021, lava fountains erupted spectacularly from a fissure in the ground over 2,000 feet long.
We have this tremendous uncertainty now. Will there be an eruption, and if so, what sort of damage will occur?
That's all we have in this bulletin. For all the news and analysis, keep watching News 9 Live.
BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter.